So I wanted to ask, especially because you're out there in Silicon Valley, I noticed that one of the Winklevoss twins made a big statement on X, formerly known as Twitter. He has come out, so he owns a cryptocurrency exchange, he and his brother, called Gemini, which my cousin actually works for Gemini. But
Huh.
this is Tyler Winklevoss. He said that he just
Hmm.
donated $1 million in Bitcoin to Donald Trump. And he says he plans to vote for him in November because he said, and I'm going to read the quote: over the past few years, the Biden administration has openly declared war against crypto. It has weaponized multiple government agencies to bully, harass, and sue the good actors in our industry in an effort to destroy it. This administration's actions have been nothing short of an unprecedented abuse of power, wielded entirely for twisted political gain at the complete expense of innovation. So I thought that was very interesting coming from this very well-known figure. And I mean, I've never met the twins, but they seem a bit more conservative than their nemesis in the Facebook movie, Mark Zuckerberg. But what's your sense? Do you think there is again another sort of tipping point in Silicon Valley? Or are a lot of folks out there concerned not only in crypto but in general on tech regulation? Because I have spoken to some folks in at least in the DC lobbying area on the tech space, and they don't like, again, what I was saying earlier, they don't like the regulatory moves of the Biden FTC and the Biden, CFPB.
Well, I think you bring up a very interesting point because I don't know how many of our viewers ever listened to the All In podcast, but David Sachs, who's a well-known VC guy, he hosted a big fundraiser for Trump where they raised 12 million and they thought they would only raise 5 or 7, whatever. So the question is, why is Silicon Valley doing this? And I think part of it is, first of all, I would say crypto has been its own worst enemy. So yes, there for every Bitcoin there were 50 other currencies where people lost their shirts. So I think it's a little disingenuous for a lot of these crypto people to blame the system or blame the media or blame the Biden administration for problems that are self-created. But that's another conversation. But I think that Silicon Valley, a lot of these people, they want, and Elon Musk, I'd put him in this category too. They want a world where they can do whatever they want. And that's what they love about crypto, right? Because the US dollar is regulated, it comes from the government, but they want a world where they can exist on their own, do whatever they want, not have to be taxed like everyone else, regulated like everyone else. So I take it with a grain of salt, but I do think it is a red flag for the Biden administration. But I would just say again, one really interesting metric was when you looked at these far right elections that just took place in Europe, right, where a lot of populist candidates and parties did better. What happened to the bond rate, which is really shows people's worries about inflation? It went up. And this is the question I would ask people from Silicon Valley. Okay, look at what Trump is proposing. If he deports 9 million people, what do you think that's going to do to the cost of labor? If he puts these ridiculous tariffs on, which are just taxes on working class people, what do you think that's going to do to the cost of goods? Okay, so these assets that you have, and then not to mention, Trump wants to make that ridiculous tax cut not only permanent but expand it, which the CBO said is going to add $4 trillion, more than 10% of our already exorbitant debt. What do you think that's going to do to inflation? So I ask you folks, seriously, look at what the guy is saying. His policies are going what he wants to do. This is what he said he's going to do. This is not the media. This is not liberal left think tanks. This is what Donald Trump has said he's going to do. Okay? It's going to reduce the value of your assets. So think about the policies. Don't put this in this wonderful, oh, gee, I'd love to have a world without regulation situation that's never going to exist. So that's my take. How about you?
Well, it's interesting because, yeah, I agree with you on the tariff stuff. I think tariffs are bad generally because they cause market inefficiencies. However, we already have tariffs against us. And that's been sort of the argument for Trump because he says we've been taken advantage of. They put tariffs on us, the reason why I'm doing this is so that ideally everyone lowers the barrier to entry and then everyone wins in that way. And he's saying for so many years, we basically were fighting with one hand behind our back. For example, with China, China used to get all kinds of perks for being listed on U.S. stock exchanges, and yet not having to engage in the same accounting and transparency practices because they were granted status as, oh, boohoo, you're a third world country. So they didn't have the same standards. And that's why you had some shady things going on. And now people are waking up to that, to say, like, you can't just have a willy nilly looking the other way and just be taken advantage of and have your lunch be.
What about deporting 9 million people and what that would do to the cost of labor?
I don't think that he's practically going to do that. I mean, I think he'll probably prioritize the violent offenders and, the people who are the greatest risk. I think that's what he'll do first.
That's a handful of people. That illegal immigrants commit crimes at a lower rate than Native Americans. You have these people are highlighted in the news, but that's maybe 10,000 people.
Well,
I mean,
yeah, I
come
mean,
on.
I think I think there are promises that he's made. I mean, people do want to have accountability and they want to know who's in the country. I think logistically, I don't know how he's going to do it. I think the sense that because you came here illegally that you should cut to the front of the line, that's wrong. But yeah, I don't know. I think, Texas is an example of a state that stepped in where the federal government has failed, and yet it's still being overrun. So we do need the states and the federal government to work together, because right now, I mean, Kamala Harris, that's her portfolio, is immigration. And yet we've had skyrocketing border crossings. And yes, only recently Trump has finally started to do a little bit more, but it's only because it's an election. And he's had almost 4 years to do things. And Kamala Harris, I hope that whoever Trump's VP pick is, I hope that person holds her accountable for her complete failure on that. But that's a whole other separate topic. But the idea of, economic policies, I mean, part of why Trump won is because he did move the Republican Party a bit more leftward on some economic populist issues. However, if you look at his overall sense on business, he is very pro-business. He is supportive of the things that the Silicon Valley people care about. So even if it's not as free market as I might like, it's, like Joe Biden likes to say, don't compare me to God Almighty, compare me to the alternative.
Well, I would say if the reason when you talked about other people putting tariffs on us, what Trump did that was his greatest mistake, I think, trade-wise, was he got rid of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, because the TPP, and again, Trump is so misinformed, he doesn't bother even to read his presidential daily brief, so he doesn't understand the issues. But the TPP was not a trade bill. It was a reduction of 40,000 tariffs and quotas on, 18,000 tariffs and quotas on 40% of the world's economy. So and our economy was already more open. So for example, it got rid of a 75% tariff that Vietnam has on American whiskey, which they love. And when the TPP was canceled, a lot of whiskey makers had to lay people off. So this idea of retaliation, this is a problem that he created. And that's the problem with populism. Populism means you have to be against free trade. And that's why that Trump is not a traditional Republican. He's a populist. And this is what's really hurt us. So I am disappointed that Biden has kept a lot of those tariffs on. I think he should have gotten rid of a lot of them. Again, all tariffs are taxes on working class people. So we will have to see what happens.